By now, you probably played Trigger on the trial mode available on Soldier MB's TV schedule, and I'm pretty sure that despite all the hype, if you're not a waifu gamer looking to pull for Trigger, chances are you feel that Trigger is actually underwhelming. And of course, it's going to be pretty underwhelming with such a bad build available on her. In any case, welcome back. Today I'm doing a quick overview and analysis of Trigger's kit based on the version available for us in the trial mode. This time I'm not into the creator early access for Trigger, so you can take this as my guide for her, with the exception of her weapon, which I'll go over in the pool evaluation video that I'll do later this week. Let's start by talking about her gameplay. Basically, she's an off-field stun unit that can also deal some interesting damage since she scales a lot of her stun potential with offensive stats. Think of it like the complete opposite of Chinyi. Chinyi scales her DPS potential with impact, while Trigger scales her stun potential with crit rate. Chinyi loves stays in the field and increases the stun window damage potential, while Trigger prefers staying out of the field and providing a sustained DPS, daze, and DPS increase for all your squad members, meaning that she's better suited for DPS units who can provide a sustained DPS on the field. Trigger's main selling point is her core skill, which adds a stun multiplier of 35% to the enemy that is active even before the enemy's stun. This is not the same thing as damage stats, by the way, such as Disc 5, Swing Jazz, and other damage buffs. This is a stun multiplier, which basically means it's a 35% DPS increase outside of the stun window. On the stun window, the DPS increase is slightly smaller since there's the base stun multiplier that all bosses get. And while 35% is definitely not as huge as Chinyi, it's quite important for you to remind yourself that Trigger is doing all of this without removing the field time from your DPS unit. Trigger's main source of damage and daze is her basic attack, not the one where she aims at the enemy and generates resources for you. I'm talking about the aftershock attack. You can only trigger this aftershock every 3 seconds, but there are a few ways to bypass this cooldown. Using Trigger's EX specials and ultimates allows her to use this aftershock attack without cooldowns up to 10 times and also without consuming resources. Not that resources are a problem for Trigger, and after the first few sniper hits, you won't need to bother fielding triggers to generate resources for a long time. If you hit the unit with an EX special, assist follow-up, or ultimate, Trigger will follow up with some stronger aftershocks, which can only be triggered every 20 seconds. And that's pretty much everything you need to know about Trigger. Just field her for the first few seconds, hit the enemy with your sniper to build up resources, and that's it. Trigger will provide sustained DPS and daze potential for your whole squad without taking field time. If you get enough energy, you can swap to Trigger and use her EX special, which increases the number of aftershocks and also gives you a quick assist to the previous unit. And just like all stunners ultimates, save it for a faster stun after the enemy recovery. Unless you're trying to speedrun Chi defense and want some extra damage from Trigger, I guess. For skill upgrade priority, focus on the core skill as soon as possible, since this is your stun multiplier, which is going to increase your DPS output by quite a lot. Then focus on basic attacks, since these are your main sources of daze, followed by ultimate and EX specials. Assists and dodges are low priority since Trigger barely stays on the field, and despite having a defensive assist, it won't benefit from Trigger's additional ability. For builds, you might have noticed that the trial version uses 4-piece Shockstar Disco, and it's not entirely a bad move. That's because her aftershocks are her basic attacks, meaning that it will benefit from the Shockstar Disco 4-piece effect. However, keep in mind that to maximize her additional ability, you need a total of 90% crit rate. This makes Shadow Harmony a really good option since it will increase both the daze potential and the damage potential from Trigger. However, keep in mind that most of Trigger damage is only possible because of Soldier MB. For the 2-piece set, use Woodpecker Electro. Unless you're already hitting 90% crit rate, Woodpecker Electro provides better damage and daze potential than 2-piece Shockstar Disco. For Disc 4, I think it's quite obvious, but crit rate will be your top priority. Attack and crit damage will only provide DPS increase for trigger, so focus on getting crit rate before trying to get extra damage on trigger. Disc 5 is purely for trigger DPS potential, and usually you're looking to run damage here. Attack is also an option, especially if you get better substats, such as crit rate, on it. Disc 6 is going to be impact. Even though attack offers better DPS potential, remember that trigger is not a DPS, and the utility she's going to provide comes through stuns without taking the field time from your DPS. For substats, focus on crit rate, followed by crit damage and attack percentage, and lastly, flat attack and flat penetration. For weapons, as I said before, her signature weapon won't be included here, but I'll talk about it in my pool evolution video for the second phase of 1.6. Trigger can use a lot of different weapons thanks to the fact that her aftershock attacks are basic attacks. For example, you can even run lighter signature, and while Trigger won't benefit that much from the increase of the impact, she can apply the weapon effect for fire and ice DPS units. But overall, one of the best standard options for Trigger is actually using Lycan signature weapon. Most of the time, Trigger will only keep it at around 3 stacks, but during coordinated support, since she can fire without cooldowns, you can easily maximize the weapon buff. Since it gives both daze and damage potential, you can see how strong it is when compared to most available options right now. If you don't own it, Fossilizer Core or Steam Oven will be your best picks for the A-rank options. Fossilizer Core is incredibly strong on most setups, but Steam Oven provides some extra energy regeneration, which enables more EX specials for Trigger. When it comes to Mindscapes, Mindscape 1 is insanely good. It increases the stun multiplier from her core to 55%, and reduced cooldown means more damage and daze potential from Trigger. For a Soldier MB team, this translates to around 13% DPS increase for everyone. Mindscape 2 fixes some of Trigger's own damage issues, but also increases everyone's damage potential. Once again, Soldier MB teams will highly benefit from this, since you are increasing Soldier MB crit damage, which in turn increases everyone's aftershock crit damage. Mindscape 4 offers some really good daze potential for Trigger, and it's actually surprising to see a good Mindscape 4 for a limited unit. Mindscapes 4 so far are quite underwhelming, but Trigger Mindscape 4 is actually quite good. Mindscape 6 is a bit weird, to be honest. If anything, I would say it's underwhelming. It offers increased damage potential for Trigger, but you still need to consume Purge in order to refuel those rounds and keep dealing extra damage. So unless the consumption part of this Mindscape works during coordinated support, it's quite slow, and I don't know exactly why or where you could find a lot of value on this. Basically, if you have enough pulls, going for Trigger's Mindscapes is actually a good move that can increase everyone's damage potential. Waifu gamers, enjoy your name card, but if you're free to play, I highly recommend you waiting for my pool evolution video where I will talk and showcase some extra numbers to help you decide if you're pulling Trigger or not. For team compositions, just like Pulcra, Triggers highly benefits from a unit that can stay on the field, dealing damage to the enemy. Soldier MB will be one of the best options, since Soldier MB acts like a support unit for Trigger damage potential. That's because Trigger is going to focus purely on crit rate, and Soldier MB is going to provide the crit damage Trigger needs to maximize her damage potential. But outside of damage potential, any other sustained DPS unit can easily benefit from Trigger's kit. If you're running a more burst-focused agent which lacks sustained DPS potential, then be advised that Trigger is not going to increase your DPS that much. But it's still a valid option in case you don't own any other specialized stunner, or you just want to run dual stunner supports and maximize your daze potential. Who knows? Oh, speaking of it, for your third slot, things are quite flexible. Overall, running a really good support will be your best option, but if you own both Soldier MB and Trigger, trying to maximize the value of aftershocks can be a valid choice. And I'm not talking about Pulcra. Pulcra's damage potential is still underwhelming, so what I'm trying to say is that you should keep an eye for future aftershock units in case you own Soldier MB and also plan to pull Trigger for your account. For now, honestly, just focus on grabbing team-wide buffs, such as Astra, Nicole, Lucy, or even Pulcra if you want to, so everyone can benefit from increased damage anytime. And that's pretty much everything about Trigger. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments down below, or join my Discord server where I usually share some early calculations before working on my videos. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, have a beautiful day, and I'll see you in my next video.